Welcome to the Revolution of Purpose podcast. My name is Kova.
And my name is Tracy.
And we're going to take up and continue the last conversation that Tracy and I had on Tracy's journey today. Little background was Tracy went through a breakup and lost a job that really changed the trajectory of her life. And part of that journey was getting a synchronistic ticket to Burning Man. And today we're actually going to be talking about the experiences she had at Burning Man.
Something to note is that on this podcast today, we will be talking about psychedelics. And it's really important to both of us that psychedelics are used in a responsible way.
We are not liable or responsible for your decision to take psychedelics or not to take psychedelics.
Great. Shall we dive in?
Yeah. Let's go ahead and get started. And I think where I want to touch on with you today is, who were you before you went to Burning Man and who were you after you went to Burning Man?
Before Burning Man, I was starting to emerge from this identity of people pleasing and conformity and feeling very lost in the process, not knowing where to go, what was next, very open to possibility. And yeah, I felt like it was the very beginning of this like cracking open of an egg almost, where like the little bird on the inside's like starting to like peck at the shell. And I feel like I was very much at that initial stage of like, oh, I'm starting to kind of come out of this shell that I had confined myself to for most of my life.
I remember the last thing that we talked about in the episode we did on you, which was you were in a 5-year relationship, you left a 5-year relationship, and then you had these series of relationships afterwards that weren't really partnerships because there wasn't really the emotional intimacy there, but they were still really important levers in your life for you to learn about who you are and get you on the right path. And I'm hearing right now is that you, going into Burning Man, didn't know who you really were and you didn't really know where you were going.
I had no idea. All I knew was it's almost like a blindfolded person just like jumping off a cliff. That's what I was doing. I was like, I'm just going to go that way because that's the way that life is telling me to go. After Burning Man, I felt more confident, more self-assured. I had a knowing that I was very taken care of and that I would be guided and led where I needed to go. I didn't know that all the time, but there was a deeper understanding and confidence in my own intuition and my own desires.
What was it that occurred at your first Burning Man that got you to walk away from someone who was lost and not sure where you were going, who you were, to really being more confident in yourself and having more trust in life?
Well, it was a series of events. The way that Burning Man is created is it almost, at least for me in my experience, it felt like one day was a lifetime. I think I journaled on my first 2 days of Burning Man, and that's about it. It's so many pages. I didn't even cover everything. There were so many learnings, so many details packed into such a short amount of time.
That's why I really want to get to the juice of it, because there are lots of little things that are in that environment that are out of the ordinary just because of the nature of the experience itself. What I'm really wanting to hear from you right now and what I'm wanting to share with our listeners, what was the transformative experience or experiences within Burning Man that really caused that internal change for you?
I find that the landscape that we are in shapes the way that we perceive our reality. Burning Man takes place in the desert. And in the desert, there is nowhere to hide. The sun is beating down from above. And as the sun sets, the shadows become much more obvious. In my experience there, I found that I was being illuminated in a very intense way. The aspects of me that had always been there were on the surface, to be examined, to be noticed, and to be celebrated. And at the same time, the shadows also came out very strongly. I got to experience myself in my highest expression and in the depths of my shadows. And I experienced them not quite simultaneously, but definitely side by side. Upon first arrival, when I got there during the daytime, I was very much in my highest expression. I got to fully embrace the moment, to be in my body, to expand myself, to connect with people in ways that I had never connected before. I embraced the experience fully, 100%. And completely dove in and had the most amazing night where I fully embraced my power, my authority, and I chose every single step of the way what I was doing. I followed my highest excitement, which was completely new for me at the time. I had never done that before. I had never lived in that way.
Let's just stop right there. How did that feel in your body to communicate that?
There's almost a level of wistfulness to it where I saw this very confident, powerful, directed woman who knew her yeses and nos and honored them and connected deeply. It spread joy everywhere she went. There was this one aspect of me. But then I also, as the event went on, I noticed myself falling into my shadows because it was familiar and it took a level of courage to step out of them. The wistfulness is that I did see the trajectory of me falling into the familiar and into my patterns in a way that didn't serve me or the whole.
What was that experience like for you?
I emerged, I landed in this space and felt so much freedom and possibility. There was so much embracing of it. When the opportunity to fall into the old came up, I found myself allowing it. Partly because there was more for me to learn there.
But what does that really mean? There was more there for you there.
There were experiences for me to have in order to actually let go of that. I needed to actually experience the pain and the suffering and the entrapment and the confinement in order to recognize that I was actually done with it and that I was ready to let that go. That I was ready to release those stories, those patterns that kept me stuck in those ways.
I hear the words you're using, but it sounds like you're speaking to me from your mind.
I am speaking in a cryptic way that is not relatable right now.
It's your experience. It's not that it might not be relatable. I guess I'm trying to understand and I'm trying to feel you. I get what you're saying in the aspect of like there was this peak experience that like showed you the possibilities of your potential. And then the other side of that, you got to see and feel the suffering and the entrapment. What was that like?
When I speak from here, it's metaphor.
That's fine.
And it's not relatable.
Well, we learn through metaphors. You might not feel understood, but it's possible someone else listening to this might understand. When you speak of entrapment, when you speak of suffering, when you speak of that negative, shadowy side of you, you also said that you jumped out of that, you stepped out of that, but the only way you can step out of that is to even notice that you were in it. What was it that got you to shift from this highest expression to you to this lowest expression of you that ultimately cultivated you in meeting this person?
I recognized his level of pain and suffering. And there was a part of me that wanted to support him and to help in some way. My savior got involved. The first time I actually said no to hanging out. And then when he kept begging, I said yes.
Why didn't you listen to yourself?
I was open to it. There was a part of me that knew that there were other things for me out there. And there was another part that was acknowledging what was happening.
Why were you open to it?
There's some curiosity there. It was a very valuable relationship, and I feel very, very grateful. I learned so much from that relationship. In the time that we were together, I learned how to enjoy silence. My entire life, I had been filling the silence with babble because I learned that that's how I was supposed to be social. On the first day of Burning Man, I've allowed myself to listen to what was true. And part of that is that I had 3 guides at the very beginning. You could call them threshold guardians if you'd like to put them in that framework. And they invited me to leave my bike at their camp and to follow only my highest excitement. That if something wasn't a full 100% yes, that I would keep going until I found it. That was how I started my experience there, where I was essentially gifted the opportunity to fully surrender to the magic of Burning Man.
What I'm hearing is that you walked into Burning Man lost and confused about who you were and where you were going with your life. And you met a relationship in that container that you were open and curious to, but it wasn't your highest excitement at the time. Even though you were living by your highest excitement as soon as you got to Burning Man. And I'm hearing this like peak experience that you had in actualizing that part of you for the first time. And then getting to see how you weren't showing up as that another portion of the time.
I guess part of it was really empowering for me. And then I also feel ashamed. That I left that experience being like, yes, I would love to date a drug addict for 1 year and have him fuck me while he's literally channeling the devil. Yes, I would love to have that experience. It's like, oh, there's a part of me that's judging myself here. There's a part of me that's like, what the fuck, Trace? There was one night where we just went off with all of his friends, and I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have to give my will and authority to these people. Like, I want to have my own experience. And because we were in this whole group, I couldn't do what I wanted to do. It felt like I had to give up what was true for me. And I went with it. For him, his burn was all about the magic of me. For me, my burn was amazing until I met him. That's kind of what I'm working through right now. of like, yeah, I feel bummed about it. And I recognize I learned a lot. And it also was probably harder than it needed to be. So there were just so many times that I didn't listen to myself. I knew within the first 2 weeks. I went out to visit him and I was like, never again. And then all of a sudden I found myself deciding to go live with him for a month. Part of it is I didn't know what else to do because I was fired from my job for staying with him for 2 weeks. That's what's up for me, where I just feel upset about my experience. Because I had this amazing, incredible experience where I'd never been so high in my life. I'd never been so free, so embodied. And then I feel like I just sabotaged it by not honoring my no because he asked.
Okay. You've processed this a lot. You've processed this a lot. And you might have not processed this one specific thing, and that's okay. You're accepted.
It feels super fucking vulnerable.
But I really want to understand how you went into Burning Man and how you left Burning Man.
I came into Burning Man feeling lost and confused and open to possibility and listening to the flow. I left Burning Man feeling lost and confused, a bit more empowered, a bit more sure of myself. And totally not sure what was next. So I had a lot of positive experiences where I got to experience myself really knowing, listening, being in my joy. And I also made some mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I also planted enough seeds that it sprouted in beautiful ways. I just needed a little detour in order to get there.
Well, a friend of mine recently said there's no wrong decision. And then you have Tony Robbins saying that decisions are everything. The thing that makes or breaks someone's life is decision. So, we have two different sides of things.
That's both.
Right? You could say that was the wrong decision to make, or you could say that was a path that ultimately cultivated in your healing of the things that caused you to go on that path, which you haven't gone on that path since then. You've changed directions dramatically because you actually took the time to reflect and to learn from it and to grab principles and change who you are and what you're willing and wanting out of your life.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
How much longer are you going to hold this against yourself?
I still got to Nevada City, even though I could have had a more fun, easy path. I chose a path of difficulty and struggle and addiction. Yeah. And my food addiction got really intense after living with him. Really, really intense. And I think he was probably just showing me what I had inside of me.
Could you forgive yourself?
I was given the name Shameless when I got to the playa, which means beach in Spanish. And the playa is essentially the sand, the land that Burning Man is on. And I was given the name Shameless as my playa name right away, day one. And so I immediately had a playa name, and I immediately had a direction, because the name Shameless is essentially all about releasing shame, right? Letting go of the shame. And so a lot of Burning Man was actually deconditioning myself and releasing all the stories and the programs in the way that I thought I needed to be. And that ranged from a lot of different behaviors, from allowing myself to really listen to what I wanted and to follow it, to allowing myself to be seen as a sexual being, allowing myself to be topless. What was that like? And I learned what that was like pretty quickly. I was biking across the playa, and I remembered I was wearing a vest that had buttons, and I allowed it to be open, and this guy catcalled me, and I'm a no to this, so I pulled over and buttoned back up my vest. But I got to explore in a lot of different ways, and whilst there was the potential for danger there, and there was the potential for unsafety, it was overall a fairly safe environment for me to do that exploration in. As Shameless, my first day of being there, I really followed my highest excitement, which is true to my design. I had the most incredible experience, and I felt so alive and so connected. And it brought me to Camp Mystic, which ended up showing up in my life later. And at Camp Mystic, there was an altar to the masculine and the feminine. And it was the first time that I really allowed myself to fully feel my anger when I was in that space. I went over to the masculine altar, got down on my hands and knees, started embracing the masculine energy, and just recognized how much rage So I got to the altar, and I recognized how much rage I had in my body around the masculine. And I remember having my hands on this huge globe crystal thing, and there was just this anger bubbling up from a really deep place inside of me. And I started to growl. And I remember having these like waves of anger kind of bubbling up to the surface. And I was allowing myself to hold this ball and allowing the anger to flow up my body in this growl. It was a very primal anger. And now looking back on it, I understand that that was the anger and the outrage at the depth of sexual trauma and abuse in my lineage and in my life. The deep distrust of men and the need for reclamation of my own power towards the masculine. And I didn't realize that until this moment. A new friend that I was with, after that moment, he asked me if I was turned on. I was like, no, I was processing anger. Because to him it looked arousing. And he asked if he could kiss me, and I said no. And he deeply honored my no. And that was a way of me taking back my power in that moment. I'm so fucking raw, babe.
You're modeling reclamation. There are going to be people who listen to this and are going to completely relate with you.
And I guess that's what reclamation is. It's diving into the parts where we feel so powerless and so weak and damaged.
By you allowing yourself to feel it right now and be witnessed in this, you're actually letting that go.
Yeah. And I recognize the power of doing this.
It's extremely powerful. I can feel the power of what you're doing right now. I'm actually really glad this is coming up now because we've got a long story for each of us to tell to get to present day. But this is a foreshadowing for our listeners and our watchers for why you do the work that you do. You've lived it, you've experienced it, you've healed it, and you continue to heal it.
Yeah. And I recognize the pain that so many women have gone through in this culture.
For thousands of years, you are modeling their claiming of the goddess right now.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for noticing me reclaiming the goddess. I feel like the way that I like to envision that is like me out in nature, bawling my eyes out on the earth or something. But this is fine. I can do it quietly in a podcast room, in a co-working space. That's fine.
This is a good point to bring too. It's oftentimes there's so much story and judgment around emoting. And a lot of your journey has been addressing your relationship with emoting in public and emoting in front of other people. And one of the things that you and I and our clients and the people that we've studied even have this level of understanding is by feeling these negative emotions, you actually come into courage and higher. You move up the scale of consciousness and you turn something that was maybe powerlessness or anger, and you bring love and acceptance to it, and you take your power back.
To translate that, essentially by feeling the shit, you get to feel good.
Yeah. And you come more into your power on the other side of it. It's hard work too.
It is.
Shame especially is associated with hiding anyways. When we address shameless and shameless becoming shameless, like we're needing to address the shame that's remaining to be able to become shameless.
Yay. I remember that there were these There was this couple. I felt called to go up onto an art car, which, if you haven't been to Burning Man, essentially it's this, what they call it is a mutant vehicle, where it's a car type thing that has been transformed into, say, a platform or a stage or
a ship.
A ship or a dragon or whatever it is.
There's so many really cool ones.
A piece of art that can be driven around the playa. And I felt called to go up to the top of one, and there was this like cuddle puddle of all these pillows and squishy things. And there was this couple, and they were on Molly. They were rolling hard. I was like, I have done Molly before. I know what you want. I was like, would you like me to pet you? And they're like, yes. So I just like created this whole sensory experience for them.
We're not suggesting or recommending taking Molly right now either.
No, we are not. They're having this beautiful experience, and he's like this Johnny Depp character who has this Johnny Depp voice, and it's a little raspy and kind of a little funky. There's something there. And then she's rolling hard, and they were just having this full experience, and it was like very loving and sweet and silly and strange all together. And so I just remember going up there and being like, let's touch all the fuzzy pillows, and they're like, yeah. Off we go. And we had this full sensory experience, which was really fun for me because I feel my inner child just loves to be super sensory and to touch and explore and play through the senses. So I got to dive into this for a little moment with these people. Let's have touch. And wow. Burning Man is very much a playground for adults and kids. There are kids there too.
You had that experience at the altar. You got on an art car. You experienced your own power, your own authority.
There was one night where I remember that I was wearing a onesie, and then underneath it I had fishnets with underwear underneath those, and then shorts on top of those. And there were just a lot of layers. And the people I was with had a full selection of medicine or drugs, whatever you want to call it. I remember being on a lot of things. I think I was on MDMA and ketamine.
Which, again, we do not suggest or recommend.
I do have one more experience to share. I kept being called back to Camp Mystic, and this was right after I had found Closey for the first time, who's an electronic artist, and she likes to incorporate nature sounds into her music, or at least she did at the time. And she was going to be playing at Camp Mystic, and this was the night that I set the intention of staying up till sunrise and watching the sunrise. And I'm not sure if I think my roommates or my friends that I went with told me to do this because it wasn't my idea, but it was something that I was going to do. And so I took acid for that night.
Which we also don't recommend or suggest.
Acid. And I was by myself, and I was biking along, and as I'm biking along, there's this other guy who's just biking next to me. We're going the same way, and it's like, hi, and he's like, hi. We start talking. Before we know it, we're friends. We're hanging out, and we're like, oh, where are you going? And we had this like beautiful lovership the whole night, and I brought him to Camp Mystic, and I remember the lighting being this reddish pink color, and the way that Camp Mystic is designed is that there are all these raised platforms around the entire perimeter of the room, and there's a stage up front. I remember being in that space in this delicious, juicy lighting with all these people in their full Burning Man outfits, which is like basically everyone being very sexy and embodied and wearing less clothes because we're all in the desert.
It's also because you're at Camp Mystic as well.
And that too.
Not everyone's sexy and embodied.
That's fair. But where I was, they were.
Okay.
And everyone was just so in their dance, fully in it, fully alive. Some people were in their like sexuality, in their pleasure. Some people were like super primal, like being like an animal. Other people were like making any sound that they wanted. Like it was just like this full experience of humanity. And I remember being in this experience and being like, oh my goodness, is this what humans are supposed to be like? Like, what? I had no idea that there could be so much beauty in the expression of humans. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And there was so much beauty and freedom in this space. And I just remember being like, oh my goodness, that is a sliver of heaven on earth. Mm-hmm. And recognizing that that level of freedom and expression with all that safety as well was just so beautiful. And I was like, I want to create this. I have one more profound lesson. I found in my experience that, well, I went to Burning Man in part because one of the men that I was dating at the time was going to Burning Man, as well as my roommate and also my friends that I went with. So I had all these people across Burning Man that I knew were going to be there, and I knew where they were camped. I had their coordinates and everything. And I found that every time that I tried to do something, it did not work. So if I tried to find my boyfriend at the time, did not work. If I tried to find my roommate, she wasn't there. Like, it was just, no matter what I tried to do, it did not work. And the moment that I let go and allowed things to unfold the way they wanted to, I would find this like amazing dance space on the corner where I just like embodied water. And I just remember being so deeply in my dance. And there was this older man that was completely enraptured by the beauty of my dance. At the time, I did not know how to handle that at all. Which brings us back to the ultra experience, where it was like there was just such deep distrust of men in my body at the time. Now looking back on it, I recognize that he was just deeply appreciating the beauty and the expression of my art. Yeah. Recognizing how the lessons that we receive in these microcosms can really be such a more expansive lesson than just that small little event. Right in the external environment, the larger picture of my life, when I try, it does not work.
No.
It does not work. And when I try harder, it works less. And the more that I allow and let go, the more that everything works perfectly and it just flows, which is a beautiful reminder for myself in my current life at this very moment, and for you as well.
Recently you just started not trying in your business and then everything started working.
Yes, I completely let go. Stopped trying completely. And all of a sudden everyone's like, Tracy, I would love to work with you.
You learned it then and then you learned it again.
Yeah. And I keep remembering again and again. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. With different iterations.
Well, this was a juicy one today. And I know that you're not really wanting to share some of your processing during this conversation. And I want you to recall what it was like seeing everyone so free at Camp Mystic.
Yeah.
You just embodied that and modeled that for everyone who's going to listen and watch this. We find freedom in surrender.
It's true. My intention is for everyone watching it that this is inspiring to you and that you acknowledge that my pain is moving through me. The story that I had in my childhood was that if I saw someone crying, I would either close off so I didn't have to feel their pain, or I would try to fix it. And something that I've learned as I've gone on this journey is that it's actually really important to feel it fully and to let it go. Mm-hmm. That's actually what creates the freedom and the joy on the other side.
Yeah, it's not just the drugs and the costumes. There's an actual
letting go
mechanism called letting go that she's using in front of whomever's listening and watching this, where Tracy's consciously choosing to feel what she's feeling and to let it go. Sometimes that looks like yawning, sometimes that looks like crying or something in between.
Really, I do want to drive home that when we let go of the pain and the emotions and allow it to flow through us, it really does allow for the joy and the happiness and the peace on the other side. And that's something that took me a really long time to recognize within myself, to realize that, like, if you go through the darkness, there really is light at the other end of the tunnel. Like, that's a thing. A lot of the medicines, which brings us back to our point earlier, is if you don't know how to work with them, they can show you the light, but they don't show you how to get there always if you're not listening to that aspect. It can lead to a deep low on the other side if you're not actually letting go of what's between you and that higher way of being and experiencing.
It also takes it from like an intellectual understanding to an actual physical embodiment of it, right? Like we need to be able to feel whatever it is, whether it's good or bad, which it's really neither, and really accept it as it is without needing to change it for it to really let go. Yeah. You just modeled that so perfectly in front of everyone. And for those who are curious about it or intrigued about what Tracy's talking about, we'll talk about that more at depth later. And this is just like a physical example of Tracy modeling the mechanism of surrender. But I want to just bring up on the other side of you feeling that shame in front of everyone, and then on the opposite side of you allowing yourself to feel that rage, you actually went into delight. Like your total story complete changed, and you start talking about this like playful experience you had, and you totally lit up. And this is actually how we create genuine happiness and joy, not from like external circumstances or trying to control our experiences. It's from actually allowing ourselves to experience our suffering fully for as long as it needs to be experienced without judging it and trying to change it. And you modeled that so perfectly in front of everyone. And then that transformation too. It's like you go from anger or like powerlessness, and then you went up into joy and playfulness. And that's what happens when you fully embrace life.
Mm-hmm. And even that experience where I was being witnessed in my dance, at the time when I experienced that, that was a threat. And I actually told him to stop watching me. However, because I've let go of so much of the pain and the trauma and the fear, I actually was able to look back with the lens that I have now today and be like, oh my goodness, he was admiring my beauty and my art. Yeah. That is a completely different experience. Yeah. And I have one more piece to add. Here's just one more why of why feeling emotions and our sensations are so important. When it comes to feeling the pain and the emotional aspects of ourselves, that actually allows us to feel more sensation in general. If you've noticed that you're feeling more numb in life, and especially in the bedroom, if you don't have access to your emotions and you're not feeling your emotions, that'll actually numb out your pleasure as well. You won't experience the higher joy, the higher play, the higher delight and pleasure. This is just an aspect to bring it all home, to give you a little more juice and reason to feel your feels.
And whatever Tracy just did there, enough of an incentive.
There we go. Cool. Well, thank you for listening to this episode.
Thanks for your vulnerability and your willingness, even though you weren't really willing at certain points.
Well, until next time.
Thanks so much for listening. Please share this with people that you think you would really change their lives or the people that they know. The best way that we can change the world and solve our greatest world problems is actually to create a revolution of purpose. And we find purpose in our challenges. We find purpose in our suffering. And that is how we actually transcend it and create a world of love and joy and play and the structures and the people and the experiences and the opportunities to match.
Until next time.
Have a good one. Thanks so much.